Thank you, Ashok. Thanks for joining the meeting today. So like Ravi and Ashok articulated, doing security in an using open standards is the way to go. The security industry has been where it is today because every solution that's out there is a proprietary solution and does one specific purpose. Like the statistics that were shown by Ashok, if you see 86% of online attacks happen because somebody stole your password. And it's not like there are no solutions for password. Over the last 25 years, you have various ways of addressing security problem. Anytime more security means it's more inconvenience to the user. That's where it starts. That's where you have a OTP coming in. You need to type in that 6 digit within 30 seconds. If you don't, that's invalid. And you might use tokens. There will be one token for your employer, one token for your E-Trade account, one token for your ICICI bank. So you end up having a necklace with a ton of tokens, which does one for each one of those. So as long as you actually, any of the solutions that are out there in the world today, they're all based off of using the old one, which is user ID and a password, plus something else. That something else could be many things that he has shown earlier. So to truly fix the password problem and security problem, unless you actually eliminate the password, you're actually not addressing the security problem. You're only addressing the symptom, but not actually the disease. That is password. So the core of the innovation here, the patents that were written 7-8 years ago, is based off of public key, private key infrastructure, which is a established, well-proven technology. And if you slap the challenge response protocol on top of that, and if you tie the biometrics, which is everywhere now, then you come into a very interesting situation where you could completely eliminate password. Conventionally, any of the attackers, their motivation primarily is not to go after an individual, try to steal your password. Each one of us have multiple passwords. It's not like we like passwords. In the digital world, unlike earlier where you have 1 or 2 passwords, one is for your corporate email and one is for your bank account. Today, if you want to go buy a pizza, they want you to create an account because they want to remember you next time when you come what pizza that you want to order. And based on the pizzas you're ordering, they want to issue coupons. So you create a user ID and a password there. And use the same password for your SBI bank account. And Pizza Hut guys, if he's not careful about protecting that password, then your bank of whatever gets compromised. So this problem is come to a shape where earlier when the internet was being used for just informational access, where you go and check some information, if you did not get your email for 15 minutes, it's just inconvenience. It doesn't matter. You'll check it after 15 minutes. No big deal. Today, if you want to open your car door and if your authentication fails, then you are in a lot. It's not inconvenience anymore. It's a headache. It's lifestyle disruption. Everything, like Ashok showed in the first slide, everything authenticates today. For everything, anytime you want to get onto the network, first step that you do is authentication. If that authentication is compromised, it's like your house is completely secure except the main door. The main door is open to all. If that is the case, the guy whoever walks into the main door has access to every room. The home is not secure anymore. So if you really don't address the password problem, you can create complicated passwords like you're mentioning. If one capital letter, one number, one extra special character, and it needs to be 12 digits, and you cannot repeat the same thing. The only people that saves you from that password is your family, because a family is difficult to hack those things. A real hacker who wants to hack you, he's actually going after server and getting the string. He's not looking for characters. He's actually getting the entire password and user ID as part of strings. That's how a hacker is motivated. So entire FIDO is based on the fact that unless you don't remove the password, you are actually not addressing the problem. The old model, you type in your user ID password and that password translates into a string on the network, and somebody goes, and then you have attacks like man-in-the-middle attacks, server attacks, dictionary attacks, phishing attacks, which is extremely common. All these attacks are related to user ID and password. Now, how does FIDO work? In the FIDO world, every cell phone today or every PC has some kind of biometrics. That could be a facial recognition, that could be a fingerprinting, that could be iris scanning, any one of those things. So you authenticate yourself to the device. Device then actually proves to the backend server, whoever is providing the service, that it is you, Ramesh, is who is logging on. The way that the proof that happens between the device and the server is based on challenge response protocol, based on public key and private key cryptography. And each time when the server wants to authenticate, they will throw a random challenge at you. The response, right response for that user ID and for that FIDO challenge gets calculated and packaged only if you release the private key on your client device, which is released with your biometrics. No biometric leaves the device. Your fingerprint is local, your facial recognition is local, your iris scanning is local. It is very simple, and it will remove the reliance of the passwords. A single gesture, it could be a single touch, it could be a single blink. In the case of voice recognition, it could be a single phrase. It is one touch, one phrase, one blink experience. You make the experiences so simple and then eliminate the password completely. And it works with every device. Like whether it is a phone or a PC, you have a camera already sitting there. In case of later smartphones, you have fingerprint sensors and that kind of stuff. And that is the infrastructure this FIDO protocol uses. Same device can be logged on. You can use multiple places where you want to log on. Each one of them have their own public key, private key pairs. Each time when you want to create an account or register account as a FIDO user, the client device actually creates a public key, private key pair in a most secure environment. In case of PCs, it gets generated in a TPM chip. In case of a cell phone, it gets generated on a secure element. That's where people like NXP will come into picture. In case of ARM, it gets generated in a trust zone kind of environment. Keys are generated in a very hardware-centric environment. And the private key actually gets stored on the local device that never leaves. And that private key gets attached to your biometrics. So any service that you want to go to, there are three root of trust. There are three things have to be aligning. One is the user, other one is the device, third one is the service. Unless all the three of them come into picture, you're not going to go through the authentication process. You can, if somebody steals your finger, cuts your finger, so to speak, and then tries to use it, then he also needs to actually steal your device. That's the only way he can hack into the system. Earlier, when somebody goes after the server, they get a billion user accounts and billion, Yahoo, when it was breached, there were a couple of billion accounts that got compromised. In FIDO world, if somebody actually hacks to the server, they get a whole bunch of public keys. Those public keys have no meaning if you don't have the corresponding private key. So when you are moving the attack vectors where a global attack that can be done on the server, you're completely eliminating that. And then the phishing attacks. Phishing attacks is about somebody sends you an email basically saying it looks exactly like ICICI Bank. They'll just twist last I into L, which you won't recognize. And they'll ask you to put your user ID and password, basically saying that there is a problem in your account. You don't know that, so you go put your user ID password. The phishing guy gets the password and user ID. In this scenario, there is nothing that you're sending. And you use different key pair for different services that you're going after. There is no trackability between various services that you go to. Today, if you go to Make My Trip and book a flight tickets to Mumbai. Next thing you flip to Facebook, you will see an advertisement for a hotel in Facebook. So there's no privacy. This one eliminates all those things. And the core principles that we used when we actually came up with the system, usability has to be extremely, extremely easy. Otherwise, you can ask, what's your dog's name in 1974 as a password question. You can ask, where did you meet your spouse first time when you had tea? Who remembers all those things now? Nobody remembers. If it is not usable, then you are actually defeating the purpose. A beautiful technology can do all kinds of problems, but if it's not usable, people won't use it. As simple as that. And you have to have privacy. Is a main core. If you see the latest GDPR, privacy is becoming central right now. And then interoperability. Interoperability is very, very critical in case of cyber infrastructure or any other kind of infrastructure. You have to get away from vendor lock-in. And if you are using somebody's technology today, and if those guys either misbehave or go out of business, then what do? You got to have interoperable systems where somebody goes bust, something else, exactly, without actually going through a lot of hoops. These are the basic principles on which, based on which the FIDO is. These are the unique benefits of FIDO. Most of the stuff, actually FIDO is the first organization where it is a client-server protocol. It is not a TCG where you're talking about client-side chipset for security. It is not a SAML or Federation protocols, which is completely only talking about server-side. It is not global platform, which talks about security in the mobile chips and stuff. This is, FIDO is a client-server. You have client pieces. Like I was mentioning, it's not enough if you say that, my house is pretty secure, but main door is open to all. That's not, when you want to have a fully secure system, end-to-end has to be secure. That's why FIDO is the first protocol where it can start all the way from chipset on the hardware and goes all the way to the server. Each one of them, have a role to play. And there is a benefits is the ecosystem itself is comprising of almost every company that matters in your day-to-day life, except Apple, unfortunately. Apple has not joined FIDO Alliance yet, but they are part of the web authentication group where they'll be embracing FIDO through browser protocols. The ecosystem is actually doing a lot of the legwork for you. They are thinking far ahead, like Ravi was mentioning earlier. Things that were relevant 3 years ago may not be relevant 3 years from now. Fingerprint using on a touch ID or cell phone, we didn't probably think of some time ago. It's here now. Tomorrow somebody might come and say, lick the phone, we'll connect your DNA, make sure it's you. And do you want to go back and change all the infrastructure for that? That's where the standard open bodies, they are looking ahead for you. They're actually looking about what's coming. Most of the heavy lifting is done by them. So you can simply sit and relax. 10 years ago, when there is an iPhone Touch ID and when there is a PC with a fingerprint sensor, the servers don't even know there is a device like that, and they don't even know how to use it. Thanks to FIDO now, they will know. They will know that, hey, this guy is coming through the network and this guy has a fingerprint sensor. Guess what? Let's go use FIDO for him. That's what the open standards will play into the ecosystem. Not to scare you, but these are the types of people that are in the industry that are part of FIDO Alliance. Recent addition to the board is VMware. VMware has joined the FIDO Alliance. We have Amazon, Facebook. If you consider from chipset standpoint, Intel and ARM are two core chipset processors. Those two guys both are on the board of FIDO. From operating system standpoint, you have Microsoft and Google. Google is the president, Microsoft is one of the vice presidents of the ecosystem. They are there. If you consider security chips, NXPs, Qualcomms are part of the ecosystem. You see the span of people that are there that are on the board of FIDO ecosystem. Most of the people are actually contributing to this and they are doing their part, just like the browsers, Firefox, Chrome, Microsoft Edge. They are doing their part. So you really don't have to think about all those things. If you can fix like I said earlier, if somebody hacks your account, it's just inconvenience. Now, if somebody hacks into your account, it's not inconvenience anymore. It's a major lifestyle issue. Then you will the issues that come with that are very, very catastrophic. And plus, like I said, the first step that you do anytime, that including dealing with your network router at home, first thing you do is you send your password to authenticate it's you, even if it is your own home router. The alliance has gone so big, and you practically have any other alliance which is addressing security aspects, they all have embraced FIDO as this default authentication protocol. That's because by September, you will have every browser in the market that will have FIDO as part of the ecosystem and the browser core infrastructure, just like SSL. You don't really have to worry about. You can take it for granted. And these are, not one. In addition to this, you also have governments. You have United States government, Germany, UK, Japan, Korea, Australia, Israel. All of those governments have embraced FIDO. This is some of the growth that we had in FIDO, and this is probably one of the fastest growing standards bodies that are in the history of technology, actually. And FIDO has been deployed in a very major customers, just so you guys know. Actually, all these guys have licensed. Just like I founded FIDO Alliance, I'm also founder of a commercial company called Knock Knock Labs. FIDO Alliance is a non-profit organization that's run by the board and membership, and that has its own governance board and all that stuff. Knock Knock Labs is the commercial implementer for is the first implementer of FIDO. Most of these companies have licensed technology from Knock Knock to include on the client side. And these are some of the phones, and Docomo, PayPal, the scale at which, one of the things that Ashok was mentioning, I think Ravi, one of those two were mentioning about the need for a scalable solution. I mean, you cannot, if you don't scale that to the internet infrastructure level, you don't really have a solution. Knock Knock has been very successful in deploying FIDO in some major customers across the globe. And PayPal, Alipay, Docomo, T-Mobile, SoftBank, Cigna, E-Trade, these are some of the customers who have deployed FIDO in a large scale today. FIDO, if you see Docomo, every service that is delivered by Docomo on their Docomo phones is completely FIDO enabled. You don't necessarily have to, you don't know password, you don't have to have any password. RS5 from Microsoft, Windows release that's coming in September, is completely going to be FIDO. When you open a Windows Hello machine for business users particularly, you won't be creating passwords anymore. You'll just get on there, you'll look into the camera, or you'll swipe your finger. Azure, Active Directory, all of them are moving to FIDO. It's an announced thing. Google Services is FIDO. Salesforce.com, FIDO U2F. Google is FIDO U2F. Box.net. Bank of America is FIDO. Chrome, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge, all browsers will have FIDO at the core by September, and we are expecting that Safari will follow the suit. W3C has accepted FIDO as an authentication protocol, as a standard within the browser. These are some of the FIDO certified products. There are close to 450 to 500 different FIDO authenticators in the market that are certified by FIDO Alliance today. These are some of the FIDO-enabled services that I was mentioning, and I also told about the Knock Knock installations around the globe. And this is not a technology that is just coming up. It is proven, it is scaled, it's operating in a global infrastructure level. Like PayPal alone has 140 million subscribers. Alipay has 450 million subscribers. They all have embraced FIDO. So the conceptual stuff, it's not conceptual anymore. It's actually happening, and it's in the product in a global scales around the globe. So these are and Korea and Japan are completely FIDO. They are far more advanced than any other country where they have deployed FIDO in a much larger scale. And these are the regulations that I was talking about. National Institute of Standards Technology, NIST, actually participates in FIDO on a regular basis. Same thing with UK government, British government, and then some of the cybersecurity standards and guidelines mentions FIDO by name. So this is a little more about the specifications. U2F is about having a specific USB dongle, and that is built on user ID password, but UAF is completely rids of the password today. And FIDO2, which is browser-based stuff, also removes the password completely. So these are the developments with respect to what browser is trying to do. And after this, I'm going to have my colleague Mahendra to actually show you the demos of how the user experience is going to be. That is something, you close the computer, and from the time you open the computer, how can you use a phone to be the second factor? How can your phone, you have to have the phone and authenticate that right from the time when you open the computer to any service that you go out globally. Your phone can be the authenticating token without using any SMSs, without using any of that stuff. Very simple user experience. And that can be any service. That is, as you guys know, Google is cloud, Amazon Web Services is cloud, Microsoft is moving, everything is moving to the cloud. And in that scenario, you have to know, if you're a global enterprise, who is using my Office 365? Is it going to be really my employee or somebody else? You have to have a very strong track of how your resources are being used, whether they're being used properly or not. And most importantly, like I mentioned, if it is not easy to use, each time when you are going from one service to the other service, if they keep asking you, what's your password, then you won't use that. That's why you have this all single sign-on stuff and SAML stuff that came into picture, that to reduce the need for asking the user for user ID and password every single time. But that's also an attack threat. After you log in and then log into your Active Directory, if you just step out by talking to the phone, which is a common thing, you walk somewhere else, somebody else comes in, you're already logged in. From there, if you want to go to your human resources thing or some other thing, SAML will assert because you're already logged into the domain, then that somebody else can do all damage that is required. And that is very common, that's called friendly fraud. You have these issues that are coming out there, so you need to be very careful. Can you challenge the user anytime that you want to see if that's the actually guy who is doing the stuff? Like, for instance, when you get into some site like Amazon or PayPal or a Google, without you actually putting your username and password, about 99% certainty they already know who you are. It's just that when you log in, get into Amazon and add stuff to your cart when you're ready to go buy, that's when they ask one more time, hey, what's your password? To make sure it is really you. Actually, they don't need to, but that's also an attack vector, So what I mean to say is the server side actually knows to majority. The reason why they do all that kind of funny stuff without you knowing who you are, what they are doing about you, only time they ask you for your password is when they want to conduct a transaction. That's because they don't want to ask you for password every time. When you get every time ask for password, it is quite possible that you may get vexed up with that and abandon the cart and go somewhere else. That's why they don't ask you. Same thing, if the password, instead of password, every time you simply come up with a challenge where you can send the right response with a single gesture, like I mentioned, one touch, one phrase, one speak, one blink, then user does not get bothered because he doesn't have to remember anything. It's a natural thing that they need to do. Hey, swipe, speak one phrase, look into the camera and blink. These are very simple, natural things to do. So with that, and this is about the details about, we had earlier FIDO U2F as one of the protocols, which uses that external dongle, and you have FIDO UEF protocol, which eliminates the password completely. FIDO CTAP uses a phone as a token, or any external thing can be a second factor. And universal server is something that will embrace all those protocols for you, and the password problem is not something that's created by anyone in this room. It's an old 60-year-old problem, and it is not going to get solved overnight. There is going to be a transition period. There is going to be a password for some time to come. And that's why you need to have a server which can cater to what is today and then take us through the transition point. That's universal server. So these are some of the things that I already mentioned. So with that, I'm going to ask Mahindra, my colleague, to do the demos. That will actually speak a lot, and that you will get a clear picture on how the user experience is going to be. And bottom line, you have to remember, once you see the user experience, there is no password involved. So there is really nobody who can go to a server and hack you or steal your password. There is no password to be stolen anymore, and they cannot put a keylogger to see what kind of password you are typing. With that, thanks very much. Any questions you guys have, I'll be here to answer those things. But I would like you guys to take a look at the demo that Mahindra is going to give. Thanks.
Thank you, Ramesh.